So ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to a brand new news video. Today, I'm really interested in getting into some of the special screening reactions or kind of reviews, if you will. Even though the special screening is embargoed until July 7th, you guys know how it is. Through the grapevine, stuff spills out, so we're going to kind of dive into that, get into my thoughts on what people are saying. But also, there's other stuff from James Gunn talking about DCU Batman, Matt Reeves Batman, and other stuff in the DCU. We also have new clips coming out about Superman, which has caused, as usual, some people being like, that's not Superman, and then other people coming to the defense of it saying, well, you don't know Superman at all. I've been waiting for this day for so long. It's happening. So Future Boba here, as I was literally doing the thumbnail for this video. Oh man, I'm literally getting goosebumps. God, okay. Matt Reeves posted to his Twitter, "Partners in crime, fighters," at Matt and Tomlin, the co-writer of the Batman Part 2, and what is attached, a photo of Matt Reeves and Matt and Tomlin just kicking it back on a couch there, and in the forefront of the picture is a script with a fat Batman emblem on it, the Batman emblem, and you can just about make out there the Batman Part 2. So, ladies and gentlemen, if it wasn't obvious enough already, this probably means that the script is done. We heard from James Gunn himself that it was expected in June, and we didn't know if that was the case, but I mean, evidently, people, look at what we have here. And I wouldn't be surprised, knowing my luck, James Gunn might go on Threads and say, I'm happy to say that it's been greenlit for pre-production, all of that good stuff. But even if he does or if he doesn't and I don't cover it, he wouldn't post this unless the script wasn't basically done. So, to all the haters who are just like, oh, the Batman Part 2's never happening, oh, Boba. Let me just bask in this for a second. This is just... it's happening. We are gonna be very busy heading into the fall and new year as we hear more about the Batman frickin' Part 2, baby. I will obviously cover more about this as we learn more, but let's just say, with all cockiness aside, I'm a very happy Boba. Cannot wait to get into covering any nugget of news that we get into with the pre-production, the casting process for whoever could be the new villain for Part 2. Any nuggets. This is just the beginning. So you may have seen on social media a bunch of people attended this special screening. Now, obviously, again, it's embargoed and we don't have, like, proper concrete thoughts out there. However, this hasn't stopped word getting out there through the grapevine. Now, obviously, we need to take this with a grain of salt. Just because we're hearing certain things, that doesn't necessarily mean me or even you are going to experience the same thing. However, what we are gathering is quite a positive response. So one of the examples I wanted to use was John Campea uploaded a video last night saying that he got to communicate with some people who were at the special screening, and he was actually told by the movie theater general manager, I believe, and he says that this same general manager has written to him before about various other movies, saying, yeah, like this one's coming out and it's all right, or this one's not bad, or this one is okay, or this one is not good. But he said that I think this is the first time this guy wrote to me and said, you are going to love this. Now, again, this guy could know John Campea's tastes, and just like he said to him before, you're not going to like this one, or this one's not that great, but you're going to love this. You might just know that Campea will really enjoy it. But I'd like to think that that could be coming from a perspective, and not only did he think John Campea was going to enjoy it, but overall, out of all the movies he may say is good or bad, that Superman could be like an overall, like, general pleaser, which has been my theory anyway. Again, like, full transparency, obviously I haven't seen the film, so I don't know how well it's going to sit with all different camps of people, but I've been thinking that this should be pleasing to most people, even if they're not like super, hardcore comic book fans who even watch videos like the one you're watching right now. Now, Campio also got some thoughts from Robert Meyer Burnett, and he said about the guy who told him about Superman is that the first thing he said is that it's 180 degrees opposite of what Zack Snyder was doing. And that was no shade being thrown at Zack Snyder, like he was trying to establish the tone, just, doing something very, very different. So that's just something I think we can all identify anyway, to some people's like and even major dislike. And I think that's a fair enough kind of thing. Like Zack Snyder's take on Superman was very relevant to the point of where it's made people literally prefer that kind of more gritty, darker kind of toned universe, and thus Superman reflected in it, that we saw in Man of Steel and, subsequently in other DCEU movies. Yet at the same time, it's also insanely comic book accurate to give us a very, fantastical Superman, a very silver-aged one. But this, again, depending on your preference, your tastes of how you would like your comic book shows to be portrayed in terms of tone, that might not be up your street. Robert Meyer Burnett goes on to say, and what he talked about, which was very interesting, is that he said it reminded him of when he was younger, of opening a comic book that dropped you right into the action. And it was big and brash and fun and basically Silver Age Superman. He also said that the trailers were a little bit of a misdirect because the things that happen, like they happen obviously, but the way they're set up are surprising. The movie was wildly entertaining and he really loved it, and just that it was different than he thought it was going to be. So once again, they're kind of echoing what I already got into. Very Silver Age Superman, reminding him of when he was younger, opening a comic book and just, you're jumping right into the action. And I've always liked those, I don't know, I guess you could call them defenses for this new tone of Superman against those who may have issues of the tone in of itself, or just jumping into a universe that's already active, which I'm also quite a fan of. I like hitting the ground running. To me, that suits my taste. I understand that we're all in various different camps and have different preferences. I think some people may mesh to it over time, even if they're slightly put off by the idea or execution of this initial phase of the DCU. But for me, ultimately, it is music to my ears that we are getting a DCU that's truly embracing a Silver Age Superman. I do think at the same time that some people will find that a little bit harder to get used to from the previous take of Superman, and where, like some people have a hard time even getting on board with Krypto the Superdog having a red cape on him. And we've also had viewer Anon talk about recent screenings compared to early screening reactions, saying obviously don't know how it will pan out with a general audience and hundreds of reviews, but I'll say that whereas before the early reactions were a relatively even spread of love, like, fine, didn't like, hate, the people I've talked to from the exhibitor and early press screenings have been much more positive. I'd say the final cut has been closer to 4 or even 5 to 1 positive, and the people who like it really seem to like it. These reviews, if you want to call them reviews, like reactions, are encouraging, but at the same time, we still need to wait until July 7th for when these reviews do go up after the embargo lifts to kind of really get that candid actual review. Because right now, it's all easy and fun and games to be like, we're hearing good things about Superman. But at the same time, there could be a few people who attended who are part of the press, various outlets, who might just be like, what? I liked this, I liked that, but at the same time, there was this, there was that about the movie, which, that kind of vibe. But so far, I'm liking what I'm hearing. I do have confidence that this will be the sentiment coming out from a lot of places. I could be wrong about that. It could even be mixed. Nobody truly knows. But I just wanted to cover that initially because I know a lot of you have already been asking me about that. Now, we're also hearing, I guess maybe even out of this special screening, about the opening of Superman being similar to Star Wars. So don't worry, this isn't, mega spoilery. It's just kind of cool to know that they're doing this. So we're hearing that the opening act of Superman marks the kickoff of Chapter 1 of the DCU entitled Gods and Monsters, as DCU Superman News on Twitter says here. But apparently the introduction has some sentences that contextualize the universe. Robert Meyer Burnett said the exact same thing on Twitter, saying Superman begins with a few text cards which serve to establish both a timeline and a sense of the world. And the final text card is something to the effect of 3 minutes ago, blankety, blankety, blankety. But that's all you're getting from me. It's 4 kids and the kids inside, which I think is pretty cool. I don't think it needs it, but I'm not against that at all, especially knowing that this universe has got an active world of superheroes in it. You know, we've had Hal Jordan, who's now regarded as a Lantern legend, who we're going to see in Lanterns, played by Kyle Chandler. We've got Guy Gardner, who's been active out there as a Green Lantern for a while, Hawkgirl. You get what I'm saying. So having maybe, I don't know if it's going to literally be an opening crawl, just like Star Wars, but maybe having some kind of sentences like this to contextualize how they could include how Superman's been active for 3 years. He moved to Metropolis after this, that, and the other. Superman's caught the attention of Luthor, that kind of thing. Maybe a little bit about metahumans and how they've been around in this world for 300 years. I think something like that will kind of maybe let me know if you think that's a good thing, especially for general movie audiences who might go into this being like, wait, okay, so new DC Universe, is this the same as the DCEU? Okay, maybe not. Oh, but there's this kind of text or something that puts things into a bit more context. Do you think that's a good thing, a bad thing? Do you think it's needed? Let me know. But now we need to move on to the new clip coming from the Jimmy Kimmel show, in where Superman bursts into Lex Luthor's office. Now, fair enough if you don't want to see this because you want to save any kind of experience for the movie theater itself. Feel free to skip to the next timestamp, and where we're probably going to go over some comments from James Gunn about the whole DCU Batman thing and various other stuff. But I've seen a lot of mixed responses to this, and I like to cover both sides of things. Essentially here, Superman bursts into Lex's office when a meeting is taking place, as in he literally kicks the living crap out of the door. And Superman exclaims, "Where's the dog?" And Luthor's just kind of like, "The dog? What do you mean?" And Superman then screams, "Where's the dog, Luthor? Where's the dog?" And he gets so pissed off that he chucks Luthor's desk, as we've seen and known about for some time now, into the window. One thing I want to say is I love how completely, utterly unfazed Luthor is in this scene. I think they deliberately made the other guy kind of freak out to kind of show the complete contrast in how Luthor isn't even moving a muscle. Like, he's not intimidated, even though Superman is pretty frustrated here, angry even, and is intimidating Luthor because you wouldn't exactly throw at a desk otherwise. Now, some fans out there have expressed some concerns, saying, oh, this isn't Superman, he wouldn't act like this, but surprise, surprise, maybe. I'm on the side in where I think this is completely justified. By the way, I want to add even more context here. This could be after Superman flies to the fortress. We know that Krypto is trying to defend the fortress alongside the fortress robots there. The fortress robots get destroyed. We know in one of those scenes, Superman is essentially crying at that with how much they mean to him. Maybe one of his only threads to Krypton that he has. And then Krypto gets taken and kidnapped by Ultraman, the Engineer, and Lex. And Lex here is just straight up denying it. And this could be all on top of how Superman perhaps even knows that the kaiju situation could have been caused by Luthor and caused all of this structural damage in Metropolis, endangered life, all of it. Imagine you just had to deal with all of that. Your own dog has been kidnapped from you. You're telling me you wouldn't, if you had these powers, go in there John Wick style, well, maybe not John Wick style, but pretty pissed off about it and demanding on what the heck is going on and where is Krypto. I think most of us can understand, hopefully, that what Gunn is trying to portray here is that Superman is just as human as any of us, which is kind of a key factor in this story. Despite being a Kryptonian, he is human, and that is one of his greatest strengths, as we've heard from another line. And one of the greatest strengths of Superman is that in these situations, is that he actually restrains himself from maybe going even further. I don't have any issue with this. I can kind of see what other people are trying to say, but I just feel like, have they ever read Superman in situations like this where, like, he can get very, very pissed off if people that he loves and cares about are in danger? And yes, that includes freaking Krypto, especially when you know this little weasel, egghead Lex Luthor is behind it, and he's acting like he's not, and you perhaps at this point in the plot, we don't really know, Superman may be cottoning on to the fact that he's behind other things. To me, I really like the dynamic, like the kind of energy we get already in this scene. Also, we know that this is the first time they meet because Lex is like, Superman, we finally meet. We also have Eve Teschmacher recording this. This probably contributes to the tarnishing of Superman's name that Lex is doing, and he's like, yes, keep getting this content, because seeing this man maybe getting this pissed is going to look even worse to the people out there with the other things I'm trying to make him look bad about. I also like the little attention to detail, because when Superman throws the desk and he roars, "Where's the dog?" That time, I don't know if any of you noticed, when he roars and exclaims that, you can hear this audio effect that they included in where the room kind of shakes. It's like that projection of his voice is so powerful that it kind of, well, shake things up. So I think that's what that audio effect was for, even though technically if he was that loud, Lex probably would have been like, oh my god, that was super loud. So for me, I don't have an issue with Superman being pissed off here. I just, to put it bluntly, I feel like some people think that Superman is a robot and doesn't react emotionally to things at times, but he can. I know some people might come back at me and be like, well, Superman wouldn't, sure, there might be some occasion, but he wouldn't let it out if he could possibly help it. But I feel like that's like, okay, so when is it okay, or when isn't it okay for Superman to display emotion? What this reminds me of as well is I think that Superman and Lois did a great job in showing Tyler Hoechlin's Superman get pretty pissed off at times. Like, Superman still has all the restraint that he has, but that doesn't mean we didn't see Tyler Hoechlin's Superman, which is my favorite iteration of a Superman on screen so far. But if you haven't seen that show, honestly, just because it's CW, don't judge it because of that. It's that good. But to get back on track, Tyler Hoechlin had some great moments there, and this is not Superman. But let me know if you disagree with me. So up next, I want to cover some of the comments Gunn made just about the DCU in general, DCU Batman, to omelette.com, I believe. Now, this has been translated, so it might not be word for word, but it definitely contributes to, some larger topical discussion that is just ongoing in the DCU, especially when it comes to Batman, and I would love to know your thoughts on this. So, Omelette.com said the DCU's Batman has already appeared, but his film, The Brave and the Bold, remains undated, without a cast and without any news. For now, the spotlight is on The Batman Part 2, the sequel to the saga directed by Matt Reeves and starring Robert Pattinson. How important is the character to the DCU? According to co-CEO Peter Safran, the DCU needs a Batman. So Safran says, I think we've been pretty clear about Batman. We love Matt Reeves and we're dying to do the Batman Part 2. Like I said, we're always going to do some projects that are primarily auteur-driven. Those are projects that we call Elseworlds, he explained. Also referencing the Joker films directed by Todd Phillips, which are not a part of the new Superman universe. Obviously, we need a Batman in the DCU, and so we're developing ours as well, even though Matt's movie is under our tent and a part of DC. We'll do the Batman Part 2, hopefully, when Matt is really ready for it, when he turns in the script, and then we'll also do our Batman and Robin story, The Brave and the Bold. So one thing I kind of like out of this quote, by the way, is that, once again, people, what Peter Safran said pretty much separates the DCU Batman to Matt Reeves' Batman. Now, I know at this point this topic is just exhaustive, but the other topic at hand is just, it seems that they truly are kind of waiting for the Batman Part 2 to get underway, have that release before doing The Brave and the Bold. Now, I know a lot of people are kind of split about this to the point of where, they did love the Batman, but because it's taken quite a few years to get to Part 2, they've now kind of checked out and are saying, you know what, if it means canceling the Batman Part 2 to get DCU Batman sooner, do it. Now, I understand that sentiment, but for me, I don't think hype will be lost when the trailer or more tangible stuff like actual reports, set photos for the Batman Part 2 start coming out. I think those same people who are like, oh, I just don't care anymore, they probably won't be saying that when the time comes. And I know some of you will be commenting it right now as you're listening to me. Trust me, Boba, I don't care. I will say, I bet you $10 that when you see that trailer for Part 2, you'll be like, oh, a damn. But at the same time, I'm not stupid. I understand how hype can dwindle between projects, especially when there's 5-6 years taking place between. But for me, it's not like you can keep a hype factor always at the same level for the next thing, like whether it's between video games, whether it's between movies. So for me, I'm not just like, oh, screw it, I don't want the Batman Part 2 because the hype has been killed because it's taken so... that's not really where I'm at. Sure, I might not be at peak hype right now, but I know when the time comes, I'm going to be looking forward to it. And as a big fan of Matt Reeves' vision in this Elseworlds epic crime saga universe, I'm absolutely fine and want the second installment in this epic crime saga. I'm not at that point, or I don't think I ever really would be, where I'm just like, oh, it's taken too long, I don't care about it anymore, I wouldn't care about it anyway, even if it was coming. No, I don't believe for a second that those people really believe that deep down. And maybe that's kind of too assuming, presumptuous of me to say, but I trust you may get where I'm coming from there. But if you're tackling it from the angle of where they genuinely might not do a DCU Batman until after Part 2 comes out, and we've discussed this plenty of times before, so the Batman Part 2 should release October 2027. Okay, well, if DCU Batman, The Brave and the Bold, the Batman and Robin movie isn't coming out until after that, that will be releasing in 2028 at the earliest. So I get that frustration. You might be in a position in where you're like, okay, actually, I love the Batman. I want Part 2. I really want to see it. But at the same time, with this new universe, if they are actually waiting for Part 2 to release until they tackle a DCU Batman, even in any capacity, then maybe it is for the greater good that they do DCU Batman soon and maybe do away with the Batman Part 2. I know that's a difficult one to entertain because for me, I'm not in that camp. I'm kind of selfishly like, even if that is the case, I want to see the Batman Part 2 and then go crazy with DCU Batman. And I also say that having maybe a little bit of speculation, which I'm not that confident about, in how, yes, we might not get the Batman and Robin movie in the DCU until 2028, after the Batman Part 2 releases in October 2027. But that doesn't mean they wouldn't find ways of still actually showing DCU Batman in this larger DCU between various projects before then. Such as the good old speculation about Clayface. I know that's not a speculation everyone wants to entertain because it is primarily a Clayface movie, but, you know, in comic books like Clayface One Bad Day, Batman does show up at the end. But, you know, entertaining that conversation is always hard because you don't want to take away from the fact that it is a Clayface film. It's in the DCU, but it's still about Clayface. You don't want Batman to necessarily steal the thunder or, you know, marketing beforehand to lean into Batman's appearance and kind of, you know, make people more excited about seeing the DCU Batman for the first time in a Clayface movie. I want people to be excited about Clayface for Clayface. So if they do have Batman in the Clayface movie, I think that they should keep it under wraps to maybe take him in at the end of the movie. That would be pretty cool if they only kept that to like a minute or two screen time and just did something cool to expand those larger threads and connective tissue to other characters in this universe. I think that does make sense, but there's obviously no guarantee of it. But that's also what I'm saying. Like, there are opportunities for DC Batman to appear before 2028. Also, there's this other project that Gunn could be super accelerating behind the scenes. We know how quick he writes things. So this next project, I know some people think it's the world's finest. Maybe you could argue that they might pursue something with Batman. Maybe it's a Trinity project. Maybe Batman could appear in something else entirely that Gunn is writing. And that could be expedited to the likes of how Clayface was, Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow. And it could even release not necessarily adjacent, but shortly after the Batman Part 2, to the point of where you don't have to wait as long into 2028 to see The Brave and the Bold, or even possibly beyond that if they're taking a while with it. This is like an age-old discussion at this point, but let me know what you think about this whole topic. Are you absolutely wanting to see the Batman Part 2 if it means waiting for DCU Batman? Do you believe that even though we will get the Batman Part 2, that they could still give us DCU Batman in some shape shape, or form in live action, even before the Batman and Robin, the Brave and the Bold movie, whenever that eventually comes out. I do think that the DCU needs a Batman, as Peter Safran said, but I also do believe that when you really put things into perspective, they're also laying down the foundations with various different projects that are releasing over the next couple of years, and before you know it, the Batman Part 2 will be out by then. You know, we have Lanterns, we have Supergirl, Superman obviously starting things off in the live action side of things, Clayface. So, do you know what I mean? After all those things come out, Peacemaker and whatnot, the Batman Part 2 I think will be out, and then before you know it, it won't actually feel like we've waited forever to have a DCU Batman, because we would have had quite a bit of content to distract us with that were laying down the founding blocks of the DCU. So that's kind of where I'm at, and I wouldn't ever sacrifice the Batman Part 2 to have him anytime sooner, when we actually have quite a bit of other content to enjoy. And the possibility, maybe, I'm not saying this confidently whatsoever, but maybe having Batman appear in some way, shape, or form before then anyway. Now, Omlet go on to say that we don't know much about the story of Chapter 1 of the DCU Gods and Monsters, but according to Safran, we can expect one Superman villain to remain a major presence in the upcoming films, Nicholas Holt's Lex Luthor. So Safran says Lex Luthor is a very important character for us in the DCU, not just in the Superman movie, the executive explained. Could the billionaire played by Nicholas Holt be the Thanos of this first chapter of the DCU? Safran didn't go into further detail, but he did highlight what he loves about the character and the actor chosen to play him. That's the wonderful thing about Nicholas Holt. Listen, I love Gene Hackman, but that was a very over-the-top performance. Nick Holt made Lex Luthor his character. It's an iconic performance, and it's great. It's realistic, it's smart, it's articulate. So it's going to be interesting to see what they truly mean by that. We've already heard that Peacemaker Season 2 will have a major appearance from another DCU character towards the end of the season, and I think considering that as they were filming adjacently at one point in time, and you know, they easily managed to get Isabella Merced's Hawkgirl and, you know, Guy Gardner and Maxwell Lord into Peacemaker Season 2 to interview Peacemaker, it really wouldn't surprise me if it's Lex Luthor who is somehow appearing later on into the season. But that theme of him appearing, perhaps, yeah, with an overarching plan into the whole big story of Chapter 1, Gods and Monsters, because there is an overarching story, and we've had even more reassurance about that being a thing from Gunn lately. So I think, you know, who knows what that could be building up to. I love the idea of kind of a Legion of Doom situation. I also would love to know how Lex makes further appearances after the events of Superman when, you know, after what Lex does, how would he not get arrested? Look, maybe he does, but that doesn't mean Luthor doesn't have ways of doing things from a prison cell. But ladies and gentlemen, that is everything that I'm going to talk about in today's video. Let me know your thoughts, as always, on everything we discussed. If you've made it to this point of the video, I'd greatly appreciate a like. Consider subscribing for more videos just like this. But I'm going to love you and leave you. So again, thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.